Council. And UN Chief Ban Ki-moon is warning of a humanitarian crisis in the country, putting the number of refugees fleeing violence and chaos at well over 110,000. Many of those refugees are heading for the border with Tunisia. Thousands are trying to cross over the border as they flee the violence in Libya, and authorities are struggling to cope. James Bays sent this report from the Libyan-Tunisian border.
It is a place of chaos and misery. These people have been trying to flee the violence in Libya for over a week, and now they find themselves packed in a crowd that continues to grow.
At the beginning, we went to the airport and saw the huge crowds outside it. Then I decided to take the road to Tunisia, and I have been stuck here for 4 days now.
For days, the situation here has been getting worse, and it appears that things now are at breaking point. Neither the Tunisian authorities or the international observers here know exactly how many people are on the other side of the border, but it's clear their numbers are growing and the conditions are getting worse by the hour. We watched as doctors treated those who'd collapsed. After days trying to escape from Libya, they're suffering from dehydration and exhaustion.
It is a humanitarian emergency and a humanitarian situation. There are right now some 70,000 persons who have crossed the border since the beginning of this crisis, since the 20th. Yesterday alone, we witnessed a significant increase. Some 14,000 people crossed in 12 hours, the highest since the beginning.
Tunisian aid workers try to help those on the other side of a frontier they're not allowed to cross. Bottles of water and loaves of bread thrown over the fence. But other Tunisians exert control using force. These are not officials, but local citizens who've armed themselves with wooden clubs. Some of those who finally make it across the border say they've been robbed. We filmed this Tunisian carrying a safe he had somehow acquired. Those fleeing are also getting trouble from Libyan border officials. This man says they're determined that no pictures of what's happened in recent days make it out of the country.
I am Libyan and I'm getting inside. They searched me, they try to find if I have stick, memory, SIM card, holding pictures, holding anything. They try to get out of you. They don't want any evidence.
The Tunisian military have started reinforcing the border wall with barbed wire. Many in the crowd still have a long, unpleasant wait ahead. Women and children the only exceptions. James Bays, AlJazeera, on the Libyan-Tunisian border.
In Oman's city of Sohar, troops have fired into the air to break up protests over economic conditions and corruption. It's the fourth day of demonstrations there. At least one protester was killed on Saturday. Sultan Qaboos bin Said, who's been in power for 4 decades, has promised more jobs and better unemployment benefits. Jordan has also been affected by the wave of pro-democracy protests sweeping across the Middle East and North Africa. Pressure is mounting on the king to give up some of his powers. Nasrina Shamaila reports from Amman.
The revolution bandwagon has yet to roll into Jordan, but the gravity of protests rocking the country is unprecedented. For the first time, around 1,000 members of the Salafi jihadist camp protest in downtown Amman. Their demand, the release of all Salafi prisoners. Their goal, to establish a presence on the streets.
We are here in the name of God and to apply Allah's law.
Viewed as a threat to Jordanian rule, the group is one of the intelligence service's biggest challenges. Here, they were untouched by security officers.
Our prisoners are treated very badly by the Jordanian regime. They live under conditions the dogs inside their palaces would find impossible to stand.
Simmering discontent is everywhere. Here outside Parliament, workers protest to oust the president of the Governmental Federation of Trade Unions. They say he's held the position for 19 years, but fails to represent their views. And outside the Prime Ministry, anti-Israel activists demand the release of former soldier Ahmed Daqamse, who shot dead 7 Israeli schoolgirls in 1997 while manning Jordan's border with Israel.
There is a clear people-driven movement here, and the Arabs are convinced that their demands will be met through pressure on their regimes. Ahmed Daqamse's health is in grave condition, and they won't admit him into hospital. We're working towards releasing him.
Emboldened by the uprisings across the Arab region, the voices of Jordanians are growing louder and their demands greater. By taking to the streets when any opportunity arises, they're exerting more pressure than ever on the authorities and even on the monarchy. King Abdullah faces unprecedented calls for supporting a constitutional monarchy, a move that would significantly curb his sweeping executive powers. Last Friday, thousands made the request for an elected government crystal clear. Whether he'll bow to these requests can't be determined yet, but Jordanians who are more confident than ever say now is the time to make their long-standing demands. Nisreen Al-Shamaili, AlJazeera, Amman.
In Zimbabwe, anti-government protesters had called on people to join a million-citizen march on Tuesday, demanding that President Mugabe step down. But few appear to have turned out. In recent days, more than 40 opposition activists who met in Zimbabwe have been arrested and charged with treason. They were detained while attending a lecture on the anti-government protests in the Middle East and have been accused of plotting an Egyptian-style uprising. The group has denied any wrongdoing. Now, there have been reports that Iranian security forces have used tear gas to break up anti-government protests in the capital, Tehran. This comes as Iran denies that it's jailed two opposition leaders, Mir Hossein Mousavi and Mehdi Karoubi. Children of the two men repeated their claims on Tuesday that Mousavi and Karoubi and their wives are being held at a prison in Tehran.
As we have always emphasized, the internal issues of our country is completely domestic, and no country is and will be allowed to interfere in the internal affairs of our country. The issues related to these individuals will be dealt with in a framework of law by judicial authorities.
An Indian court has sentenced 11 men to death for an arson attack on a train that left dozens dead and led to religious riots. Another 20 people were jailed for life. 59 passengers, most of them Hindu, died in the 2002 train fire in Gujarat state. Politicians blamed Muslims, sparking riots that left up to 2,000 dead. France has a new foreign minister. Alain Juppé has officially taken over from Michel Alliot-Marie, who was forced to resign after a cabinet shuffle on Sunday. She faced criticism over revelations that she holidayed in Tunisia and her alleged ties with the ousted leader Zain al-Abidine bin Ali. Germany's defense minister, long rated the country's most popular politician, has quit after a scandal over his PhD thesis. Karl Theodor zu Guttenberg was stripped of his doctorate last month after a portion of it was found to be plagiarized. Paul Brennan reports.
The suave young Bavarian aristocrat was one of Germany's most popular government ministers and a darling of the country's conservative right. Karl Theodor zu Guttenberg had been tipped as a possible future leader, and he frequently topped opinion polls ahead of his boss Angela Merkel. But his carefully crafted reputation for honesty and integrity was undermined last month by the revelation that as much as 20% of his PhD thesis appeared to have been copied without attribution. Guttenberg has strongly denied deliberate plagiarism and at first tried to ride out the publicity storm. But with the scandal showing no sign of fading,